Thank you. I don't intend to use PowerPoint. I've got a thing about PowerPoint. I find if I use PowerPoint, I'm concentrating so much on getting the PowerPoint right that I forget to speak to you. So I'm afraid you just have to look at me or elsewhere as you see fit. After this morning's, I thought, excellent presentation on something which is right across Scotland and affects health and all the rest of it, this may seem a little parochial, but I'm hoping that there are maybe lessons in here that we can explore later. What I want to take you through is the journey that we've had at the SPSO, the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman Office, over the last 2 years and the major changes that we've made. My first real clue that there were issues to be addressed at the SPSO came during my interview. When you know how people go with competency-based interviews and everyone gets asked the same question all the time. One of the politicians on the panel said, "Do you mind if I go away from the script, Jim?" Well, there's nothing you can say apart from that. No. He said, "How are you going to fix it?" And that was the first indication I had that there was a general view that the organisation was broken. And I spent some time trying to find out for myself what the issues might be. And I recall very clearly going into the SPSO office a couple of days before I was due to take up office and meeting some people. And I met 3 managers. One of them, I think quite seriously, offered me the view that the fact that there were 3 managers was because there were 3 floors in the building. I asked another, "What are your KPIs?" And they said, "Well, I've got them. I've definitely got them. I've got them." And I asked another, and said, "No, we had them. We definitely had them. No, we don't have them." And so I was beginning to get a picture of an organisation which was a very caring organisation. It cared about the cases that came in. It cared about the people who brought these cases. It cared about finding real solutions for real people with bodies under our jurisdiction. But as an organisation itself, it was lacking in a bit of focus. The performance was poor. There were cases in the office that had been in the office, never mind through the local structures of complaints, for 2, 3 and 4 years. There was one case in the office when I arrived which had been with us for around 18 months and we'd still not worked out whether it fell within our jurisdiction. I think morale in our office was particularly low, and I think there are a number of reasons for that. I think the people who worked there, who, while they believed strongly in their own ability to provide a good service, believed that the organisation's standing was poor, with bodies under jurisdiction, with the Parliament and that committee of the Parliament which funded the SPSO, with our customers, although at that time we'd never have called them customers, we called them complainants, still do to some degree, that the organisation lacked credibility and the organisation lacked authority. All the management theories and policies were there. If you'd come out of a business school and you looked on paper at the organisation, every box was ticked. Our policies were in order, our governance was in order, there was involvement in decision making, and therein, I think, lay much of our issue. We had done everything correctly, but in getting everything correct, we lost efficiency, we lost decisiveness, and we lost a bit of direction. My view then, not now, and I'll explain why not now, is that the organisation was overfunded and overstaffed. I think we had good people, but these good people have very good terms and conditions of service, they have excellent pay, and the staff turnaround in the year before I arrived was 0. And that was understandable because people believed in what they were doing and were well paid for what they were doing, and the conditions were excellent. I believe in the organisation at that point, it was close to having a bunker mentality. The whole world's against us. You know that thing, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, I think I'll go and eat worms. It was almost at that stage. So something had to be done because this was a paralysed organisation. It was stuck in the headlights and didn't know where to go. Now that's a criticism of the organisation in management terms, not in caring terms, and not about bringing the right priorities and investigative strength to bear. But having said that, when we looked at some of the work that we had done, we found that some of that, because of a lack of decision making within the organisation, was poor. There was one case that we found in the office where it had been around and round a number of times, lots of people had looked at it, been back and forward to a local authority, to the complainant, to the local authority, to us. There was a meeting, elected representatives were brought in, gone on and on for 3 years. And nobody would make a decision. And I made a decision in that case, knowing that no one would be happy with it. Everyone who comes to the Ombudsman's office is right. They know they're right, they believe they're right, but when they come to the Ombudsman's office, somebody is going to be told, actually, you're not. And getting to that point was difficult for the organisation. And what we did with that one was, once we made the decision, we sent the case away to the local government ombudsman in England and Wales and said, look at how we came to this decision, please, and give us a crit. And I asked Jerry White, who was then just about to retire as a local government ombudsman in England, and therefore was expendable in my view, to look at it. And he came back with a beautiful report, which is highly, highly critical of us. And he said, this is the worst case of complaint handling I have ever seen in an ombudsman's office in the United Kingdom. And so I published it. And it appeared in the front page of the Herald. And it appeared in the editorial of the Herald, and it got coverage in the BBC. My staff, probably still to this day, thought I'd lost it, thought I'd gone. But what I was trying to do was to make a public acknowledgement that we understood the problems that we needed to face, to make sure my staff understood that we were serious about facing them, but also to let them understand what it feels like when a body like the Ombudsman's Office criticises another public body, and they haven't forgotten that. So let me just run down for you what I think 3 or 4 of the key issues that we had to address was, and very briefly tell you how we did that. The leadership style in the organisation was involving, democratic, I would say. Decisions were taken in groups and committees or not taken in groups and committees. I inherited an executive board, I think, of 9 people. 9? Some people at the back were on it. 9 people. And in that executive board, 4 people were voting members and 5 were not. And I can remember asking them, can any of you think of a single issue on which, as Ombudsman, I'm going to let you outvote me? Just to crystallise the thinking that we couldn't take all decisions by putting our hands up for who's for and who's against. Our business plan had lots of projects in it which were distractions from the core business. We had over 80 cases on our books which were 1 year old or older in the office. What I tried to do was to make it clear that the leadership style in the office would be decisive. Now, this is change against all of my principles. My principles are basically about getting an organisation, getting people with you and driving it from the middle up and the middle down. That's how I think change works. This was going to have to be very much top down. So we changed the management structure. We introduced measures. We introduced key performance indicators and stuck to them. We set the business a target of getting rid of all the cases which we'd identified as being over 1 year old out of the office within 6 months, and we achieved that. And that was important because in the internal culture, this was the great burden. Our workload, our caseload, we can't do anything about it. And persuading people they could do something about it and making that happen helped to get people behind the drive to change. The confidence internally that people had in the leadership was going to be measured by how we faced off to the bodies under jurisdiction externally. So I decided that we would also introduce there timescales. So some of you will know that if we issue a report, a draft report which is going to Parliament, bodies under our jurisdiction get 4 weeks to come back and answer that, with comments on that, and complainants 6. And people are restricted to factual comments. The reason for that was quite simple. The process was out of control. It needed to be brought back into control, and the only person who could control that process was the Ombudsman. And I can remember one chief executive, who might actually be here, certainly here today, saying to me, "This will end in judicial reviews, Jim. We'll just judicial review you all the time." And my response to that was, "Fantastic. Let's do it. Let me see you go to the leader of your council and tell them you're going to spend thousands of pounds taking to me to judicial review to be able to respond to me within a month." And that, I think, began to send a message that we were not going to be pushed over. So I went to COSLA and spoke at COSLA and told them how bad we were. And then I told them how we were going to improve it. And people in my office then believed that they were empowered to say to local authorities, to health boards, to universities, to whoever, these are our rules and this is the way we work. We set up a review of all our complaints handling processes and we made them better. We got the process better. But by this time, the confidence in the organisation was such that people were willing to come in and look at what they were doing in the past with a critical eye, whereas previously they looked at it with a defensive eye. It now became okay to look at the organisation and to suggest improvements. And I think we're an awful lot better. I think that the senior management team that we have in place now, which is a very young team, is driven by a sense of public service built on an efficient business. And that has begun to percolate down. It's okay now to use the word customer when we speak about people who come to us. I was told very clearly, we don't do that here, Jim. They're not customers. They are customers. It was important to take away the bogeymen internally from our people. And doing that required a bit more public profile than the organisation had been used to. And that, of course, led to responses and attacks, politicians and others. From my point of view, that was a godsend, because we were back in the position where the organisation was being criticised, but my organisation could see that we didn't just sit back and take it. We pushed back, and we very proudly said how much better we were. And we've actually begun to see some fruits of success here. We're now viewed in the United Kingdom among ombudsmen, and I don't know how many of you know this, there is apparently a word ombudsmanry, which is the science and art of being an ombudsman. And I'm not sure that our office actually fits into anybody's definition of that. But in the world of ombudsmanry, we are now seen as a centre of excellence. The oldest case in our office today is less than 1 year old. I don't think there's another ombudsman's office in the United Kingdom in the public sector who can say that. In my view, we've got the best management systems and the best structure of any ombudsman's office in the United Kingdom, and most of my colleagues tend to agree with that. We are now in a better place to fulfil the second core of our business, which Parliament asked us to do, which is to set up standardised complaint handling procedures across the public service in Scotland. I'll tell you now, I haven't really said this in public before, I did say to the presiding officer of the Parliament, not long after I was appointed, that there was every likelihood that I would not be able to implement what the Parliament was asking us to do in the timescale it did, because I did not believe the organisation had sufficient credibility to do that, to tell other people how to go about their business. I do now. I think we're in a very good position to tell people. The best, I think, sign for me as the leader of the organisation that we're on the right track is that my first year, my first 18 months, was spent on management, change management, and helping others to move in the right direction. My main task now is delegation and making sure that my senior team are running the organisation well, and they are. And that's what I should be doing. An ombudsman should be looking at decisions, should be thinking about decisions and their implications. And I think that that little journey in an organisation of 50-odd people has been an excellent one. I don't know how many lessons there are for your organisations from something as small as ours, with a budget as small as ours. But in terms of taking an organisation and moving it through transition to a better stage, and then getting it, as we had an all-staff away day yesterday, saying I expect the staff in my organisation now to be pressing me for further improvements in our way of working and better results. And I think that will happen. That, for me, has been one of the best experiences of my working career, as has bringing on an excellent team of young managers to do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.